Hi everybody, my name is Jeremy Krug and I'd like to welcome you back to another chemistry video. In this video we're going to be learning about some more patterns on the periodic table. If you're new here, I'd like to encourage you to look around, and if you like what you see, please consider subscribing, and if you learned something from this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. Now if we take a look at the periodic table, we've already learned about several patterns. In fact, this entire chapter here about electrons has been all about patterns. We started by looking at patterns in the electron configurations, and then we talked about patterns in how to calculate valence electrons, and then we talked about patterns in how atoms obtain an octet and their charges as well. So lots and lots of patterns on the periodic table. In this video, we're going to add some more patterns to our list here. So the first part of this is actually a question. Which is larger, an atom of lithium or an atom of cesium? So on the periodic table, lithium is right here, Li is its symbol, and then cesium is down here at the bottom. Cs is its symbol. So which of those two atoms is larger? Now, when I ask students in my classes, usually they say that cesium is the larger atom. And I would agree, cesium is the larger atom. Now, why is that the case? I think intuitively most of us appreciate or understand that cesium is going to be the bigger atom of those two. Well, the reason has to do with the number of electron shells. The trend is, as we go down the periodic table from top to bottom basically, the size of the atoms, or what we sometimes call the atomic radius, is going to increase. And the reason for this is that atoms with more occupied energy levels have their valence electrons on average farther away from the nucleus. Now, if it helps, think about the stadium model of the atom that we looked at in the very beginning of this chapter. You might remember that we said that an atom can be visualized as like a stadium. I know it doesn't look like that, but that's just a way to help us visualize it. And if you have a stadium that has two levels, it's a lot smaller than a stadium that has 6 levels. Well, that's basically what we have here. Lithium has 2 occupied energy levels, whereas cesium has 6 occupied energy levels. It makes sense that the atom with 6 is going to be larger than the atom with just 2. So as we go down the periodic table, the size, the atomic radius increases. Now how about this question? Here's a similar question, but this is different. Which is larger, an atom of potassium or an atom of krypton? So if we look at the periodic table, potassium is over here on the far left side in period 4, and krypton is on the far right side in period 4. So which of those is larger? And by the way, they're not the same size. One of them is larger. Now, when I ask my students this in class, often they say that they think krypton is larger because it has more electrons. It just feels like it's got, a larger size. Well, as it turns out, that's actually not correct. We can actually measure the sizes of these atoms and find that potassium is much larger than krypton. Now that surprises most students. The trend is that as we go from left to right across the periodic table, the size of the atoms, or the atomic radius, actually decreases. And so normally we say that the atoms on the left side of the table are larger and the atoms on the right side of the table are smaller. Now how is that possible? That feels kind of the opposite of what most students would expect. Well, it has to do with the protons. Now I know in this chapter we've been focusing on electrons, and we haven't said a whole lot about the protons, have we? In fact, sometimes I'm actually fond of saying that protons don't really do much in an atom. The only job that protons have is to keep the electrons from flying away. And that's essentially what they're doing there. As it turns out, the protons actually have a lot to do with the size of the atoms here. Think about how many protons potassium has. Potassium has 19 protons. And those 19 protons are trying to pull in or to attract those 4 electron shells that potassium has. Well, how about krypton on the far right side of the table? Well, krypton also has 4 electron shells, but it has almost twice as many protons. It has 36 protons to pull in those same 4 electron shells. So guess what? Those 36 protons are going to be a whole lot more effective at pulling those electron shells in much more tightly. And that's how that works. Atoms that have more protons can attract their valence electrons more tightly. So as a trend, the atoms on the right side of the periodic table are much smaller than the atoms on the left side of the periodic table. Now, here is a pictorial representation of this. We have the atomic radius of many of the representative elements here given in picometers, and we can see that that trend holds true for almost all of these. We see that the biggest atoms are at the bottom of the table, and specifically toward the bottom left-hand corner of the table. So down here with cesium, we have the largest atoms on the table, whereas at the top of the table, and specifically the top right-hand corner of the table, like helium is very tiny, hydrogen, of course, is very tiny, neon, fluorine, oxygen, these are all very small atoms toward the top, and especially the top right of the periodic table. Now, there are some other trends that we want to be aware of on the table. Electronegativity is another one. Now, that's a big word. Basically, electronegativity just means the attraction that an atom has for electrons. And if we think about this, I think we can say that fluorine has 7 valence electrons. It would really be more stable with 8. So it really is going to attract those electrons very, very effectively. So fluorine has a very high electronegativity. On the other hand, sodium over here on the left side really isn't in the business of attracting electrons at all, is it? In fact, we learned in the last video it would really like to get rid of an electron that it already has. So we'd say that sodium has a very low electronegativity. So as a trend, we can say that atoms that are toward the right side, and specifically toward the top right corner of the periodic table, have very high electronegativities, where atoms toward the left side of the table, and specifically toward the bottom left corner of the table, are going to have the lowest electronegativities. Now, just so you know, these atoms that are noble gases already have an octet. They're stable. We normally don't include those atoms in our discussion of electronegativity. So fluorine would be the one that has the highest, as it turns out. And then these on the bottom left, cesium and francium, those are going to have the lowest electronegativities. Now, another trend or pattern on the table is called first ionization energy. Sometimes we just call it ionization energy. First ionization energy specifically refers to the energy that's required to remove the very last electron from an atom. And when I say the last electron, I'm talking about the very last electron in the highest energy or the farthest away sublevel in that atom. So for example, if we're looking at the first ionization energy of neon as an example, its electron configuration ends with 2p6. So we're talking about how much energy it would take to remove that very last 6th 2p electron from neon. And as you might expect, since it's a noble gas and it's very stable, it's going to require a lot of energy to remove an electron from a noble gas. So neon, helium, argon, all these that are noble gases are going to have very high first ionization energies. But what about sodium? We talked about sodium earlier. What if you tried to remove an electron from sodium? Is it going to require a lot of energy to do that? Not really. In fact, we said earlier that sodium would be a whole lot more stable if it lost an electron anyway, right? So it's not going to put up much of a fight if you try to take an electron away from it. So as it turns out, the trend for first ionization energy is that atoms that are farther toward the right have a higher first ionization energy, and atoms that are farther toward the left have a lower first ionization energy. And comparing top and bottom, we can say that atoms toward the top of the table have a higher first ionization energy, and the ones that are toward the bottom have a lower first ionization energy. And think about it in these terms. We know that neon is going to have an extremely high first ionization energy because it's a noble gas. It has that stable octet. But what about radon down here? If you tried to steal an electron away from radon, that would still require quite a bit of energy, but not nearly as much. And why not? Well, think about how many electron shells radon has. It has 6 electron shells. So that last electron is pretty far away from the nucleus as far as atoms go. And so that electron can leave a whole lot more easily than that last electron in neon, because it's in the second electron shell. It's a whole lot closer to that nucleus. So as a rule, we say that the highest first ionization energies are at the top right-hand corner of the table. The lowest are at the bottom left-hand corner of the table. One last trend, this is called electron affinity. And electron affinity is defined as the energy change that's associated with the gain of an electron. So when we add an electron to an atom, what's the energy change going to be? And generally speaking, if you go to the farther right and top of the periodic table, that energy is going to be greater. And if you go toward the bottom left-hand corner of the table, the energy will generally be lower. So I hope you learned something about some periodic table trends, some patterns on the periodic table here. If you learned something or found this video interesting or useful to you, if you'd hit that thumbs up button, give me a like and share the video, I would really appreciate that. That really does help. If you really like what you see, consider subscribing and, like I said, sharing this with some of your classmates or other folks in your chemistry community. Thanks for watching, and in the next video, we're going to be moving on to another section altogether, talking about quantities of substances. I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.